Welcome to the Fintech Scaling Show. This podcast is sponsored by Scale Up Consulting, helping fintech startups accelerate customer acquisition and set up business operations to scale systematically. When you're ready to grow, reach out to us at richard@scaleupconsulting.co. Now, over to the show with Richard Doty, founder and host. Hello, everyone. Today in the Scaling Show, we have Paresh Daya, Chief Strategy Officer of Fraxium. Hello, mate. How are things going out in South Africa?
Hey, Richard. Great to be on your show. Thanks very much. Yeah, South Africa is going well. We're going into winter. We've got some sun out at this point in time, and we're trying to get through lockdown.
Seems a common thread. I mean, obviously living out in SA, winter is pretty much the English summer, so not a bad thing to look forward to.
Exactly.
Let's kick things off. Maybe you could just give us a bit of background about yourself and your business.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Thanks, Richard. So I have been in financial technology for pretty much most of my career. And this was before the word fintech actually became cool, right? And all the cool kids were using it. My career was predominantly within tier one investment banking. And I spent quite a bit of time out in London, close to 10 years, working for large tier one investment banks such as Lehman Brothers, Nomura, JP Morgan, and the like. Predominantly within sell-side sales and trading, and with specialization in foreign exchange. So basically, building out new business models, translating that into utilization of technology for implementation and to be as an enabler, and also spent a bit of time on the buy side, and that is in portfolio management and asset management at JP Morgan. Currently based right now in Johannesburg in South Africa, and also spent a bit of time at some of the large commercial banks here in South Africa, but I've now taken my entrepreneurial journey full-time at this point in time. Right now, as you mentioned, I am the Chief Strategy Officer for a company called Fraxium. And really, my area of speciality, which is really what the company does, is within fintech and within digital assets, and in a strong expertise and skills within the blockchain industry. So using blockchain as an enabler and as a technology implementation for the business, and utilizing digital assets to build a new financial system as we go forward into this new world.
Cool. And it sounds like you've had quite a varied career. You've worked in the banking sector or the financial services sector for a number of years. And obviously now heading out on your own journey with Fraxium. And I noticed that in March that you sort of made the hop over the fence into the new world. Obviously quite an interesting time. It must have been challenging but exciting, I guess.
Yeah, look, could have been better, but as you know, entrepreneurs have to roll with the punches in any case, right? So might as well, jump in straight in deep into that frying pan. I feel that in the actual opportunity, and one of the reasons why I'm being based in South Africa on the African continent in any case is because of the opportunities. And I feel that the opportunities to make a large socio-economic impact, especially to emerging economies like Africa, and reaching out into Southeast Asia, South America, and these various different geographic locations, I think that the opportunity to make that impact is absolutely tremendous. And for me, being within the fintech startup entrepreneurial space is a space where we can move, very quickly, very agile, very lean, and try to make a decent impact.
Oh, cool, man. It sounds like you guys are definitely heading in the right direction. And just for Fraxium, can you explain the problem that you guys are trying to solve? And maybe provide a couple of use cases for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Richard. So let me take a step back here, right? And let me talk a little bit about the financial system and the financial structure. Look, I think, pandemics and crises like this tend to highlight the vulnerability and the cracks and the fragility. We've seen that in 2008, when Lehman Brothers used to work for Lehman Brothers, actually, when Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy, and we saw the actual repercussions of that crash. And we've seen that exponentially now in 2020 with the pandemic, right? This year, not only are we seeing major financial depression, but we're also seeing major consequences and repercussions from things like the lockdown and social distancing, etc. What we've really been seeing is that central banks, governments only have a few levers that they can pull within these particular situations, such as the Federal Reserve, printing money under the guise of quantitative easing, together with lowering interest rates, and you can see that almost to either zero or near zero in various different jurisdictions. And all of these levers have negative consequences on the economy and on people. And these directly affect people in terms of things like high inflation rates and a decrease in the leverage of the buying power of the sovereign fiat currency. And we've been seeing this, right? So I think over the last 10 years, Richard, we've really moved into a space where we envisage a new financial system. And this new financial system really at the heart of it, forms a, kind of multiple pillars. Number one being democratization of access to the financial system, moving the unbanked and the banked population into a particular financial system, and also people that are currently locked within the traditional financial system. Also having a look at, how do we utilize new disruptive business models for unlocking of economic value? How do we create real-time interconnected liquidity pools? And for us, Richard, I think that this is a massive global movement that's going on. And at the heart of it is, what we call decentralization together with digital assets. So digital assets for us represent anything from cryptocurrencies to tokens, either security or utility token, all the way up to a central bank digital currency, right, which we're seeing a flurry of activity at this point in time, together with things like stable coins that are backed on a stable underlying commodity, for example. So for us, we have baked digital assets into the heart of what we're trying to solve. So right now, Richard, some of our, like the heart of the problem statement that we're seeing right now is fintech innovators are unable to bring disruptive, innovative fintech business models into the population and into the world, purely from the fact that there's a myriad of costs involved. There's a lot of complexities in terms of new business models and underlying complex infrastructure technology, and really, a shortage of skills on people that actually understand how to do this. And that's what Fraxim is actually targeting, an innovative fintech launchpad platform that allows fintech innovators to get to market, build their solution, scale up quickly, faster, and cheaper.
Okay, I mean, that sounds quite, I guess, cutting edge and pioneering in a way. My assumption is, through what you just said, is the tech could be used, obviously, by entrepreneurs or maybe corporates. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, so our platform is agnostic, but our target markets are really across the board. So we target small, medium, and large enterprises. We, of course, love working with startups because they share the same ethos and the mentality in terms of getting to market very quickly. But we're also seeing a lot of uptake with incumbent organizations that are really looking to envisage what their future business models are going to be going forward. And I think that is really what the pandemic has allowed and forced these organizations to actually look at. So for us, as I mentioned, we are across the spectrum, but our target market is definitely within the fintech space and the various different fintech verticals that we actually want to target.
I mean, you've alluded a lot to fintech innovation, also the adoption of or the move towards the new financial system. I guess that's been happening over the last sort of 15, 20 years, and the acceleration sort of post the crash in '08. What are your thoughts on how the next 12 to 24 months will play out in the space?
Yeah, look, it's a big question, right? So I think that look, I'm in a post COVID-19 world, right? I think that we are in a state of disarray. And I think that there's a lot of negativity around. We've seen industries that are collapsing, especially when you look at things like the airline industry, the hotel industry. We look at SMEs in the retail and the food and beverage industries and those sorts of domains. And I think that they've had a massive negative impact on what's been going on with the actual pandemic. And honestly, hopefully, I think that people have taken this time to actually rethink their lives and what actually holds value to them. And I think, one of the emerging trends that are going to come out of this is, what is the future of work? Okay. When I talk about the future of work, I don't mean, remote working or working from home or working from co-working space or coffee shop, using Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever, but actually going deep into thinking around what are roles and responsibilities going to look like in the future? What are people's jobs going to look like in the future? I mean, as we're seeing record high unemployment rates globally, not just within the US itself, and also within South Africa, potentially we could be sitting at a 50% unemployment rate at the next count. So I think that people are really rethinking future, what is freelancing? What does the gig economy actually mean going forward? And for us, my personal opinion is that especially within emerging economies, like South Africa and the African continent, we believe that SMEs, technology, tech startups, entrepreneurs are going to be the actual businesses that are going to hold the key to unlocking value within these economies. Because as you can imagine, we suffer with a lot of political and economic instability. And we strongly believe that SMEs are going to be the ones that are actually going to fuel this and drive the future for this. And within the fintech space, even more so. So I talked about this new financial world that we're going into, and I see this, exponentially increase, post COVID-19, and tech entrepreneurs utilizing digitization and tokenization and 4IR technologies such as blockchain, crypto assets, IoT, machine learning, drone technology to really fuel the kind of next future of businesses.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I mean, definitely, it seems like the acceleration pedal right down, and making certain that businesses and the like really use technology and make certain that everyone, not just the privileged, have access to it. Because as you know, definitely in South Africa, in the emerging economies, sometimes it's not always readily available to those that are on the streets.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, so I've kind of held off from talking about technology up to this point in time, because we really want to focus on, things like business models and value propositions and, what is the impact to the end user, and the man on the street, so to speak. But I think that we're on this fence where we now understand how to use these complex technologies and, these 4R technologies that I alluded to help, drive the economies forward. So, for us on a Fraxium basis, we very strong proponents of blockchain technology. And as I mentioned before, digital assets and tokenization of digital assets to be secured on blockchain technology. We've seen a lot of hype in the market up to this point in time, especially with blockchain and crypto and digital assets. But I really think that we are actually honing down right now to specific use cases, especially within the fintech space, of where this technology can actually be used in order to drive customer-centric solutions, especially, again, within emerging economies.
Let's stay with that for a second. Could you give us a couple of examples of those type of use cases or opportunities that are emerging right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest fintech verticals that we've seen that, I feel is quite competitive right now is the payment space. So especially when we're talking with not just domestic payments intra-country, but also international remittances and payments, cross-border payments. So, if we just kind of stick with that use case for the time being, international payments typically take anywhere from T+3 or today +3 days, all the way up to potentially even T+10, depending on the currency pair that is actually being traded or transferred and the liquidity based on those currencies. And couple that with the exponential cost of transferring money cross-border. If you just had to look at South Africa, we have a large Zimbabwean expat population in South Africa. So South Africa, Zimbabwe is one of our biggest foreign exchange and payment corridor. And if you have a look at how these expats are sending money back home, it could be anywhere from cash, physical cash suitcase that is being transferred across the border, or using a money transfer operator like a Western Union that is taking anywhere from a 7 to 15% cut or haircut within this actual payment itself, right? So, we see, using technology to streamline payments as one of the biggest use cases. I think that there's quite a bit of information out there on the actual payment space. But for us, where there's actual market capture right now is particularly, within the kind of lending, borrowing, saving space within fintech. We're seeing that being a very kind of shallow offering from a disruptive fintech environment or a disruptive fintech business model perspective, and really where we're going to see a lot more innovation coming out. So, I think lending, borrowing, saving, we're seeing a very big decentralized finance movement based on blockchain technology within that space. But I think also, just touch on a few more, the earning category within fintech. So having a look at, what are new income generation streams, as I alluded to before, how we can use the gig economy, freelancing, incentivized mechanism. And I think also within the insurtech and the regtech space. These are some of the kind of high level fintech verticals that we're seeing a lot of interest in, and we're seeing that can really, really exponentially increase impact.
And as you move forward and from a Fraxium perspective, start getting more involved in those opportunities, what do you see as maybe the main barriers or challenges to pushing those forward and making certain that the new opportunities are actually adopted?
Look, I think that leaders always face that first man problem, right? They almost have to be the first people that are walking through that deep snow in order to generate that path for the rest of the people to actually follow. it's a tough walk. If you've ever walked in deep snow before, as I have, it's a very tough walk. I think that couple that together with I think that the lack of understanding of disruptive technology, right, such as blockchain and digital assets, exacerbates the problem for go-to-market strategies and kind of new fintech business models of the future. But I really think that, a lot of people have done some great work in this space to educate people, inform people, and also demystify some of the myths within this particular space. And interestingly enough, Richard, I think that Africa actually leads the charge within, cryptocurrency searches on Google, for example, and particularly, with on-ramps and off-ramps between crypto and fiat currency as well. So Africa has a large growing youth population, which is absolutely amazing. But I think that moving forward, we need to start having a look at how do we embed these sorts of topics within secondary education, going up to university education, and start getting the word out there on how this can actually be used. So, I think that information and knowledge sharing and education is absolutely key to this. But in addition to that, Richard, I also feel that within the space, there's actually a lack of client experience. There's a lack of user friendliness. So, for example, can our grandmothers actually understand what digital assets are, or buy and sell digital assets, or invest within a company that issues tokens, for example? I think not at this point in time, right? So essentially, we need to think about client propositions and value propositions. With the clients that we work with as a B2B company, we work very closely with our clients to build out these business models and ideate around B2C value propositions. So constantly we are thinking about how do we build these solutions in very client-centric manner so that they are actually agnostic to the underlying technology under the covers. If we just run with the payments use case that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago in terms of international remittances, that Zimbabwean expat that is sitting here in South Africa, all he wants to do is send money back home to his family. And he, firstly, number one, wants that money to get there. And number two, he wants as much of that money to get there as possible. How that happens under the covers, he doesn't really care. So he has to be absolutely agnostic to the underlying complexities and the infrastructure around it. And that's what we're trying to build in as Fraxium and as our interaction with our clients that are sitting on Fraxium itself. And that for us is where this next generation is actually going to go towards.
So it sounds like you guys are collaborating a lot to make certain that, in your words, the new financial system, you can embed the new financial system into the infrastructure and fabric and the ecosystem. How does that actually play out in reality?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take it from a pure Fraxium perspective. So what we do is a great analogy that I like to use, when I talk to people and when I talk to investors is, in the 90s, we have the invention of the internet, and it was fairly rudimentary, and people were sending packets around and using it for email, etc. But for example, if a big company like Yahoo, for example, want to build a website, they would really need to know the underlying infrastructure, the underlying protocols of the internet to be able to build that website, right, and get it out in a very rudimentary fashion online. Now, fast forward to where we are now in 2020, Richard, if you want to start a blog or website for yourself or for your company, you would typically use a WordPress or Wix or Squarespace or something of that sort with a nice drag and drop kind of function. You wouldn't really wonder, under the covers, how does this actually work in terms of the underlying protocol itself. As Fraxium and as myself personally, I feel that we are at that stage within the financial system. We are on that precipice of that new financial system. And Fraxium is actually that foundational building blocks for this new financial system. So essentially, we provide these building blocks out of the ready-made building blocks out of the box to be able to help our clients to be able to build fintech modules. Now, how does that translate concretely? We abstract our clients from the underlying complexities of fintech business models and complex infrastructure technology, and we provide what we call APIs, application programming interfaces, and all our clients really need to do is develop their value proposition, and we potentially help them out with that and connect into our platform to be able to use our functionality.
That makes complete sense. So you're taking the pain out of integration in a way.
Absolutely. 100%. We've taken that, I would say, 100 steps further, right? It's not just from an integration perspective, but for example, if our clients want to build anything regarding digital assets, which is what our platform is built for, all they need to do is plug into our platform. They can easily create, maintain, manage, support, monitor any sort of digital assets together with the fintech modules that we provide out of the box. And we have an underlying blockchain network that runs under the cover of the Fraxium core platform itself.
Oh, cool, man. Over the next 6 months, what are you guys looking to do? And what are your specific growth plans over the next 6 to 12 months, I guess?
We've had some really good traction in the markets within the South African market at the moment. We have some good few clients that are imminently launching within the next month. And we have, a fairly decent pipeline of clients, although we have been hindered a little bit by the COVID-19 pandemic. But essentially, number one, we are raising a seed round. So we're looking for growth capital to kind of, exponentially push us into the next trajectory of growth within the Fraxium space. And so I think, some of our growth plans will really look at, kind of closing that seed round, but also increasing our client numbers, not just here in South Africa, but also scaling out to one or two other geographic locations within Africa. So we, predominantly seeing, quite a bit of interest out in the big economies within Africa that are, very startup friendly, very innovative, a lot of, good entrepreneurs and medium-sized enterprises working on disruptive business models. So we definitely want to take advantage of that. And, I think subsequent to that is really putting the strategies in place for kind of growth and scaling of the business, really in terms of marketing, sales, and business development. So that for us would really be our kind of plan for the next 6 months.
Cool. And I mean, I guess there's a number of people that may be listening right now and are in the same position as you guys have gone through a good period of growth and are going and scaling to the next level or just on the cusp of scaling. Are there any tips you'd like to give these guys and girls?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think especially where we are right now, within the crises that we sit at, I think that scaling is extremely difficult at this point in time. So my advice to companies that are in similar situations like Fraxium would really, obviously, number one, be to actually be cash liquid or try to be cash liquid as much as possible to actually manage those cash flows within the business itself to actually survive this pandemic. But also just to, focus on the fundamentals of the business, focus on, existing clients and revenue at this point in time. So, mature those clients, have a look at additional pipeline of clients and try to extend that revenue, but also utilize this time to actually put plans and strategies in place for that scaling. So, as I talked about, what we are looking at from a 6-month basis, have a look at those underlying business fundamentals so that, once we start seeing positivity in the market, we start seeing a lot more kind of flurry of economic activity. Those businesses are, ready to actually, get out of the gates and are first out of the gates to actually extend and actually grow their business. Those would be some of the tips that people will be looking at. Some of the other things that we're working on at the moment is potentially looking at crowdfunding that I think that businesses can have a look at for kind of scale and growth capital. For us, we've seen that capital injection has been limited to debt plus venture capital plus private equity. And it's been very limiting. So we're starting to see an uptake of companies that are coming to us to have a look at how can they actually crowdfund their business to start this investment for scale and growth. So that is potentially one avenue that I would advise people to actually look at.
Oh, some really sound advice. I had some similar advice a few weeks ago. A friend or a mentor said to me, Richard, right now in these sort of uncertain times and when people are in the situation that a lot of people are in right now from a business perspective, it's time to sort of knuckle down, build those relationships and enhance what relationships you do have, maybe extend into new networks. And as you mentioned as well, it's time to look at the horizon and really knuckle down and think about that strategy. Because if you don't, you might be at a disadvantage in 6 months or 12 months because the leaders, as you alluded to, are doing that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt about that. Look, I think that Obviously, social distancing and lockdown has put a damper in closing physical deals where meeting people for physical meetings. But also look at the positivity on the other side, right? I would say that 99% of people are sitting in front of the computer at home at this point in time, right? There's no traveling, there's no major in-person meetings. So I think that companies need to take advantage of that to try to, as you mentioned, build those relationships, get those conversations going so that they are out the gates. But really, I think that also businesses need to take advantage of the digitization that this pandemic has forced people to move into. Not only have people been forced to use video conferencing tools, etc., but in the fintech environment, they've been forced to use digital platforms and use mobile banking and to get very familiar with wallet mechanisms and e-wallets, for example. So this for us is what we are taking advantage of. And I always like to look at the opportunity and the positivity coming out of a negative situation. For us, especially as Fraxium within the fintech domain, we feel that this is literally going to exponentially increase our growth and the fintech environment growth with regard to digital assets, new investment schemes, crowdfunding, having a look at how we can trade tokens within the secondary exchange on the private markets, how we can unlock this liquidity and this economic value. So this for us is really what we're taking advantage of at this point in time.
Yeah, cool, mate. And listen, it's been fantastic having you on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. But before we leave, before I let you go and get back to the real daytime gig, how can people find and connect with you and your business?
Yeah, sure. People can reach out to me directly on social media. I'm quite active on Twitter and LinkedIn by my name, Paresh Daya. If people want to email me, they can grab me on paresh@fraxium.com. Very simple. Or if all else fails, you can have a look at me and grab some of my contact details on my website, which is pareshdaya.com.
Great. Again, thanks for joining us, Paresh. And obviously, let's stay in touch.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks very, very much for having me, Richard. I know we could probably carry on for the next kind of 2 hours talking about all these various different aspects, but hopefully in your next podcast. But thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Definitely, mate. Cheers. Bye.